I should have walked away the moment I noticed the smell. It wasn't the usual village market odor, sweaty people, dried fish, roasted plantain. No, this was different. It was sweet, too sweet. Like rotting mangoes soaked in perfume. It clung to the back of my throat and wouldn't leave. But I kept walking. I had no reason to be in that part of the forest. Not really. The road was narrow, just a cracked path of red earth and dry leaves that snapped under my sandals. I'd gone looking for palm oil. That was my excuse. The main market in Unknowingly was closed for the festival, and Mama and Ketchy swore someone deep in the bush had palm oil for cheap. "It's only sold on Omeka Day," she said, pressing the empty bottle into my hand. "Only once every 5 weeks. But don't overstay. They don't like strangers." I thought she meant rude villagers. I was wrong. The trees grew denser the further I went, and the air turned cold even though the sun still burned above the leaves. And the path just opened. It was like I walked out of the world. A clearing, huge, silent, unnatural, sat in the middle of the forest. No birds, no insects, just stalls, dozens of them, covered in faded red cloth, some dangling charms and dried herbs. Others had piles of cowries and bones laid out neatly beside unfamiliar fruits, blackened yams, and strange carved boxes that whispered when the wind blew. I shouldn't have stepped in, but I did. And just like that, I entered the market that trades in souls. I didn't even notice the people at first. They weren't moving, just standing behind their stalls, staring. Each vendor wore a veil made from spider silk. Thin, transparent, but their eyes glowed behind it, green, red, white. A man sitting beside a basin of what looked like beating hearts hissed. First time, I froze. He smiled. His teeth were completely black. "Don't worry. First trade is always small." I took a step back, but a girl, maybe 12 years old, brushed past me and picked up a piece of roasted meat from a stall nearby. The vendor bowed, and just like that, she vanished. I blinked. She was gone. I turned to run, heart pounding, and that's when I saw Chica, my little cousin, 8 years old, brown dress, one sandal missing, as usual. She stood by a stall holding a carved wooden doll. "Chica," I gasped, but she didn't answer. She smiled and pointed. "Wanna buy it? I like it." There was no vendor at the stall, just the doll and a thin piece of paper underneath. I reached for it. The paper read, "To claim, offer what you love most." What kind of joke? But Chica was already hugging the doll. And as I picked it up, something happened. The ground shook just slightly. A faint scream echoed far off in the distance. And Chica turned to look at me, her eyes now completely black. That night, she disappeared. We searched the whole village. Every hut, every compound, even a nearby stream. Nothing. Everyone asked me what happened. I lied. I said she ran off in the market. But I knew. I had traded something. I just didn't know what yet. Let me tell you how it all started. 3 days before, I arrived in Unknowingly to help care for my sick uncle. I'd been living in the city for 5 years. Lagos, where the buildings rise and everyone moves like they're running out of time. Returning to the village always made me feel out of place, like I didn't belong anymore. But Chica was my favorite, always following me, asking questions, laughing too loud. She still believed in old stories, spirits in the well, trees that talk, markets that appear on special days. I used to laugh, until I walked into one. The night after Chica vanished, I couldn't sleep. A rooster crowed at 2 a.m., out of place. The air was thick, and the candle I lit refused to stay burning. I was sweating under my wrapper, even though the night was cool. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not outside. Inside. Bare feet slapping against the clay floor. I rose slowly from the mat and turned to the door. Nothing. Until I turned around again. There, sitting on the floor beside the water pot, was the doll. The same doll from the market. I screamed. Ran outside. My uncle came running, lantern swinging. When we returned, the doll was gone. The next morning, I went to Mom and Ketchy's hut. She was the oldest in the village. Everyone said she was close to the ancestors, that her mother was a spirit woman. I told her everything. Her face didn't change. She simply said, "You went to the Nkita and Quo market. That place does not sell goods. It sells memory, soul, time. You don't buy with money. You buy with self." I felt sick. I didn't know. She raised a shaky hand and placed something in my palm. A single cowrie. It was warm and pulsing. "Go back," she whispered, "before it collects something else." I didn't want to go. But that night, another thing happened. I found my reflection staring back at me from the water pot. Only it blinked when I didn't. So the next Adaeze, I returned. I followed the path. The smell hit me again, and just like before, the clearing opened up like a wound. But this time, the stalls were full of people I recognized. Villagers. My own aunt sat behind one stall, staring blankly as she sharpened a curved blade. A man I once saw in church was holding out a bowl of water, but the water reflected fire. And the stall that had once held the doll now had Chica's shoe. I picked it up. Another note. The price has not yet been paid. I wanted to scream. I ran from stall to stall, begging someone to help. But all they said was, "You bought. You must pay." That's when I realized something worse. The market wasn't just in the clearing anymore. It had followed me home. If you're still here, ask yourself, what would you trade for something you love? A memory? A person? A future you haven't lived yet? Stay with me. In the next chapter, I'll tell you what I saw when I tried to pay the price and how it almost ended me. They say every debt must be paid, but no one tells you that some debts are taken, not collected. I returned home from the market in a trance, gripping Chica's single shoe like it was a lifeline. My breath felt heavy like it had weight. My skin itched under my wrapper, and my ears rang with whispers I couldn't place. Nothing looked the same anymore. Not the compound, not the trees. Even the chickens avoided me. Worse, I couldn't find my shadow. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The wind never stopped howling, and the candle flames flickered in reverse, as if they were sucking in light, not giving it. I sat near the kitchen hut, Chica's shoe on my lap, whispering prayers I hadn't said since I was 12. Then, the doll returned. This time, it sat on my mat, legs crossed like a visitor waiting for tea. No one in the family noticed it, but me. My uncle stepped right over it like it wasn't there. My aunt looked past it and asked if I wanted yam porridge. I whispered, "You see it?" She frowned. See what? I knew then. I was slipping into the market's world. The price was close. Later that day, I went back to Mom and Ketchy. She didn't answer her door. Not the first knock. Not the second. The third time, it swung open on its own. She was sitting in a chalk circle, murmuring to a dried calabash. Her eyes were white. Fully white. I didn't step in. She spoke before I said a word. "It's not your soul they want." Not at first. My lips trembled. Then what? Memory. Name. Bloodline. She looked at me now, her eyes returning to normal. The market tests you first. You offer what you love most, her. But now it's coming to see what else it can take. I shook my head, tears pooling. I didn't mean to trade her. I didn't even know. She stood, legs shaking. Intent doesn't matter in that place. A choice made is a binding contract. The only thing stronger than trade is sacrifice. I leaned against the doorway. Then I'll sacrifice myself. She shook her head. No, that's too easy. You must outwheat the market, or it will feed on you, bit by bit, until there's nothing left but a name written in ash. That night I saw Chica. She stood at the edge of my bed, silent, soaked in rainwater that hadn't fallen. I reached out. Her voice, flat, unfamiliar, said, "You offered me. Now give them more." Then she vanished. The next morning, the market came to town. Not as stalls, not in full, but people started disappearing. First, it was the pastor's wife, then a young boy. Then one of the goats dropped dead, its eyes hollowed out. And each time, I heard whispers outside my window. Debt unpaid. Debt unpaid. My own name written in ash began appearing on walls. Adaeze. 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 I scrubbed them off. They returned. I was losing time. Hours would pass, and I'd wake up with red dust on my feet. My hair smelled of incense. Once, I woke with a string of calories in my mouth. I needed to act. So I made a decision. Go back to the market and try to reverse the trade, even if it killed me. On the third Adaeze, I returned again. But the market didn't wait for me in the clearing. Instead, I found it in the middle of my compound. Every hut became a stall. The trees formed an arc. The animals stood still, watching like silent guards. I stepped forward. My aunt's face was behind one stall, smiling too wide. Her eyes bleeding upward. The pastor's wife stood beside a basin filled with blood, her hands dipped elbow deep, washing something invisible. Then a voice echoed, not from outside, but inside my chest. What do you offer in return for what you took? I fell to my knees. Anything. The ground split open, and a hand reached out. Not human. Gray. Twisted. Fingers like claws, nails made of glass. It grabbed my wrist. The voice again. Then give your truth. All of it. From birth till now. Empty yourself, and the soul may be released. I screamed, because I understood. Not a physical offering. They wanted my life story. My essence. My secrets. My regrets. Everything I'd hidden. They began to show it to me. My childhood betrayal. A boy I left in the rain. A lie I told that broke someone's marriage. My fears. My envy. The abortion I had at 22. All playing in front of me like a twisted film reel. Offer this, the voice whispered. Give all, and the trade may balance. But I hesitated. If I gave all that, what would be left of me? Suddenly, Mama Nkechi appeared beside me, dragging a chain of bones. Don't give your story. Give your blood. That's older. That's deeper. She cut her own palm, smeared across the air. A portal opened, burning white, and through it I saw Chica. Eyes wide, terrified, but she was holding something now. A doll. My face on it. She was the next vendor. I cried, no. Don't take her. Let me replace her. The market trembled. The stalls shook. The voice returned. Only balance matters. Then it happened. The price shifted. They no longer wanted Chica. They wanted me. But not just my soul. They wanted my future. My joy. My motherhood. My laughter. Every moment I had not yet lived. And I agreed. Because I couldn't let that child stay. The moment I whispered yes, the ground swallowed me. I dropped through darkness, screaming, and woke up, covered in sweat, on Mama Nkechi's floor. She was gone. Only a single note remained, scrawled in blood. Debt delayed, not cleared. You gave hope, but the market remembers. It always does. I ran home. Chica was there, playing with the doll, alive, smiling. But she no longer blinked, and she no longer cast a shadow either. What if I told you that the scariest part wasn't what the market took, but what it left behind? Stay close. In next chapter, I'll show you how I realized the market had marked me permanently, and what it forced me to do next. I wish I could tell you that bringing Chica back ended it, that I returned to life, laughed again, even slept peacefully. But the truth is, the market never leaves you once you enter. It lingers, behind mirrors, in the smell of burnt leaves, in the silence between heartbeats. It started with the birds. They stopped singing near me. I'd walk through the village and hear them chirp until I came close. Then silence, like a switch flipped off. Then the reflections began. One afternoon, I leaned over the stream to wash my face. The water showed me walking away while I was still kneeling. I splashed it quickly, heart hammering. Later that night, I stood before the cracked mirror in our kitchen hut and watched my reflection smile 5 seconds after I did. It wasn't me. Not anymore. Mama Nkechi had vanished. No one saw her leave. Her hut was still there. Her food untouched. Her charms cracked in half. And inside her calabash, I found a note written in what looked like charcoal. Balance is not peace. It is only silence before hunger returns. Then, the market started feeding again. Only this time, through me. The first incident happened during Sunday prayers. I joined the women to scrub the church floor. As we sang hymns, I felt something behind me, like fingers pressing into my shoulders, but no one was there. One of the women, Adaeze, dropped her sponge and gasped. She pointed at me. I turned and saw that the water behind me had turned black. Thick, sludgy. When I tried to speak, a voice, not mine, came from my throat. Two must pay for the one you stole. I blacked out. When I woke, Adaze's hair had turned completely white, and the next morning, she was gone. The village whispered. Something is wrong with Adaeze. They didn't know the half of it. My dreams were no longer mine. Each night, I walked the market in my sleep, barefoot, eyes open, touching the stalls. Sometimes I'd wake up in the stream. Other times in the graveyard. Once I woke up standing in the schoolyard, holding a doll with my own face again. I knew I had to leave, so I packed a small bag. But as I reached the edge of the village, the air thickened. I walked 10 steps forward and ended up back in front of my uncle's hut. I tried again. Same thing. I was trapped. The market had turned the village into a loop, and I was the thread holding it together. Then came the test. It arrived in the form of a stranger. A tall woman, dressed in modern clothes, denim jeans, dark sunglasses, braided hair falling like a waterfall. She walked into the village like she'd been there before. Asked for palm wine. Smiled at everyone. Too friendly. But I saw her shadow stretch the wrong way. It moved even when she didn't. I followed her. At sunset, she walked to the stream, dipped her fingers in, and whispered, "Time to open." The water parted, and the market appeared again, right there in the stream's reflection. Stalls. Fire. Cowries. Dolls. But this time I saw a new stall. It had my name on it, Ada, and in front of it, laid out on a mat, were my broken childhood toy, the earring I lost in university, my mother's funeral photo, my womb still bleeding. She turned to me, took off her sunglasses. No eyes, just fire. "You're right," she said. "They're ready to collect." I backed away. I already paid. I gave him Chica. I gave them me. She stepped forward. "You only delayed it. You still owe a final price." I shouted, "What more can they take?" She smiled. "Your future, your descendants, your name and time." That night, I tried to destroy the doll. I threw it in the fire. It screamed, not a toy scream, a human one. The flames danced in reverse. The ashes formed a name. Ezen. I had traded someone else again. The guilt broke me, so I returned to the clearing. This time, I brought offerings. Everything I owned. Fabric, jewelry, money, even blood. I screamed, "Take it. Just stop." But the market laughed. The stalls began to chant. "You walked in. You bought. You belong." And then they made me an offer. A permanent stall. My own. I could choose the trade. Gain power. Live without aging. Never feel hunger again. All I had to do was take one soul a week. One. Every 7 days. A fair deal, they said. And the worst part? I considered it. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. And that was enough. The market shimmered. My hands burned. And I woke up with a mark on my wrist. A cowrie embedded in my flesh. Have you ever felt your body wasn't yours anymore? Like something else was wearing your skin? Breathing with your lungs? Because from that day on, I wasn't Adaeze anymore. In next chapter, I'll tell you how I tried to fight the market from the inside and the horrifying thing I saw when I looked in the mirror at midnight. They told me not to look into the mirror at midnight. Not in the market. Not in the real world. But I did. And what I saw shattered something inside me that has never healed. After the cowrie embedded itself in my wrist, I stopped feeling like a person. I stopped dreaming like one, too. The market began to bleed into everything. Meals, shadows, even family moments. I'd be pounding yam and suddenly realize my pestle was made of bone. I'd serve stew and see a floating I rise to the surface. Worse, I stopped aging. My aunt looked at me one day and said, "You haven't changed in weeks. You're glowing, but it's not right." It wasn't. My eyes had started reflecting light, even in the dark. I no longer cast a full shadow. When I walked through the stream, the water recoiled. I became the cursed woman in the village. Children stopped coming near me. Pregnant women crossed the road when they saw me. And still, I refused a deal. Every 7 days, the market came to collect. And every time I resisted. But it started punishing me. The first was my uncle's goat. It walked into the bush and came back skinned, but still breathing. Then, my aunt lost her voice. She could only hum in reverse. I knew I was next, so I made a plan. I'd face the mirror at midnight. I'd confront whatever I had become. Maybe I could find a way to pull the market out of me. I didn't tell anyone. I waited until everyone was asleep, lit 3 candles in front of the broken mirror near the backyard hut, and sat cross-legged. I began to hum, low like Mama and Ketchy once did. I stared at my own eyes, and waited. At exactly 12 a.m., the air shifted. The flames blew toward me. The mirror shimmered. And then my reflection blinked. Only I hadn't. I froze. The reflection smiled. Not kindly, but wide, toothy, too many teeth. Then it stepped forward. I screamed and fell backward, but the reflection stayed in the glass. It leaned close and whispered, though its lips barely moved. You were chosen long before you were born. You're a market child. The trades began with your mother's mother. The soul debt is inherited, and you are the final collector. I shook my head violently. No, I'm not. I won't be part of this. The reflection grinned. You already are. Every breath you take feeds us. I shattered the mirror. Glass flew. My palms sliced open. Blood hit the floor, and immediately a new portal opened. Not a glowing one. A dark, pulsing rip in space. I backed away, but it pulled me in. I landed in a space that was not Earth. Not sky. A room made of floating stalls. No ground. No walls. Just vendors and silence. Each stall had someone I knew. My mother. My grandfather. Even my stillborn brother. All behind stalls. Their eyes glowed silver. They didn't speak. They just stared. Then one figure stepped forward. A little girl. Not Chica. Me. A younger version of me. Age 7. Holding a doll. Not any doll. The first doll I ever made a wish on. I remember now. As a child, I cried for days when my parents fought. I whispered to my doll, "Take them away if they don't love me." And 2 weeks later, they died in a car crash. The market had heard me then. That was the first trade, and it remembered. The child me looked up at me. "Make your wish. Trade something. Or stay here." I fell to my knees, tears streaming. I don't want anything, but the market doesn't need you to want, only to feel. I was overwhelmed with pain, regret, shame, and in that moment of emotion, another trade happened. The candles in my real-world room blew out, and my aunt, sleeping peacefully nearby, screamed once and stopped breathing. I woke up, gasping. My wrist burned. The cowrie was gone, but my aunt was dead, eyes wide. No sign of struggle, just silence, and a faint smile on her lips. I fell apart. I ran into the bush, screamed, scratched at my arms, tried to drown myself in the stream, but the water turned solid as stone when I entered. The market had bound me now fully. I was its vessel, its gate, its final collector. The villagers came for me the next day. Torches, shouts, prayers. They believed I was possessed, that I had cursed the land. And in a way, they were right. But before they could reach me, the market opened beneath their feet, swallowed 5 of them, left the rest screaming. They ran. No one came back. I lived alone after that, in silence, with whispers. And once every week, someone died. No one could link it to me directly. But I knew what happens when you become the very thing you feared. Because by the time I looked in the mirror again, I didn't see Adaeze. I saw a vendor, waiting for her next customer. In next chapter, I'll show you how I tried to break the curse completely, and how the market demanded a price I never imagined paying. Don't forget to subscribe if you are enjoying the story. There's a moment between silence and madness, a breath, a flicker, where you feel both powerful and cursed. That's where I live now. After my aunt's death, I stopped fighting the market. Not because I gave up, but because I was planning. If the market fed on trades and souls, then maybe I could starve it. Close the door from inside. Or, better yet, break the very law that held it together. That meant one thing. I had to learn how the market began. Mama Nkechi had once whispered something before she vanished. Market children always carry the map. Not in books, in blood. So I cut my palm again and let the blood drip onto a clean calabash. It fizzed, and a symbol formed, twisting, ancient, shaped like a tree with human eyes. I didn't know what it meant until I dreamed of the tree. In the dream, I stood in front of a massive Irako tree in the middle of an empty sky. From its branches, dolls hung like fruits. Beating hearts pulsed inside some of them. Others were black, shriveled. A woman stood at the base of the tree. Her body was made of roots. Her face was mine, but older, wiser, terrifying. She said only one thing. Every trade begins with desire. Kill the desire, kill the deal. I woke with a mission. I would destroy desire in the market, break the temptation, cut off the trade. But how? That's when I remembered Chica. She still played with the doll. She never aged. She spoke less now. One day, I watched her place the doll into the fire. It didn't burn. She whispered, "It's hungry again, Ani." And I understood. The doll was the tether. A cursed object, just like my mark. So I gathered every object the market had ever touched. Every charm the old mirror shards, cowries, bones, even the doll, and carried them deep into the forest, to the same clearing where I first found the market. But it was gone. Just grass. So I screamed, "Come out. I'm done trading." No response, until I reached into my wrapper, pulled out the doll, and crushed it with a rock. Then everything changed. The air twisted. The trees bent backward. The grass caught fire without flame, and a massive figure emerged. 10 feet tall, bones for fingers, a head shaped like a giant cowrie shell, eyes glowing like lanterns dipped in blood. You broke the item. Its voice wasn't loud, but it echoed inside me like thunder in a tomb. You defied the trade. I stood my ground. You killed my aunt. You took Ezen. You marked me. I'm ending it. The figure tilted its head. Then make your own market. What? Every vendor must trade. If not with us, then on your own. I realized then, to break the curse, I had to create a new system. One not built on greed, but on something else. But what? The answer came in the form of a scream. Far behind me, Chica, she had followed me. The figure turned toward her, its long fingers reaching. I ran, slammed into it, cut my own wrist, and smeared the blood across the earth. And I whispered, I trade myself completely, not for gain, but to seal the market. Let no one trade again. Let this blood be the final coin. The forest split open. The cower in my wrist exploded, and everything went black. I woke in a bed, in my uncle's hut, Chica beside me, alive, whole, no doll, no mark, no whisper. The village was quiet, for the first time in months, normal. But peace is never free. A week passed, then two, no deaths, no visions. Then on the third week, I saw a child in the village square. He dropped a rock, and it bounced upward. I blinked. Behind him, an old woman swept, but her shadow moved ahead of her. The market wasn't gone. It was changing, evolving, and worse, it had started to grow inside others. I thought I had made the final trade. That blood would end it. But I learned too late. Markets do not die. They reinvent. In next chapter, I'll tell you how I found a village elder whose family created the market, and how her confession almost drove me insane. They say when you dig into the past, you shouldn't be surprised when it bleeds. I wasn't digging for gold. I was digging for truth. But all I found was rotting history and my own bloodline buried inside it. After my sacrifice in the forest, the village returned to something like normal. But it wasn't real. It was quiet but not peaceful, like a snake coiled under your bed. Waiting, I still saw flickers. A woman pouring water that steamed cold. A boy laughing without sound. A shadow that passed in front of the sun. That's when I heard of Mama Yuzo. They said she was over 100 years old, that she never left her compound, that she could speak to trees, that her grandmother was one of the first vendors. I packed some food and walked for 2 days to reach her. She lived near a crumbling hill, surrounded by tall grass and rusted charms hanging from sticks. Her hut was built of stone, ancient, heavy, and sunk halfway into the earth like it wanted to be forgotten. When I arrived, the wind stopped. A cow mooed in reverse. I knocked. She answered. Her eyes were white, milky but aware. She smiled without teeth. You finally came, she said. She sat me down beside a fire and poured something dark into a calabash. Taste, she said. It's not for the tongue. It's for memory. I drank, and the world fell apart. I saw visions. People walking backward through fire. Markets being born in the hearts of screaming mothers. Cowries growing from wounds. And a child. A girl, maybe 10 years old. She had my face. She was crying, tied to a tree, as robed figures danced around her, chanting in a forgotten language. One of them was my great-grandmother. Another was Mama Yuzo herself. I gasped and dropped the calabash. My skin was steaming. Mama Yuzo didn't flinch. You're what we call a final thread, she said. The last born in a cursed line. Your ancestors didn't just trade souls. They built the first market. In their hunger, in their pain. She stirred the fire slowly. They fed the spirit of commerce with blood, desire, and betrayal. And now, the debt passes down. Every generation makes a payment. You, girl, were meant to be the final collector. A walking gate. But you rejected the role. I asked her if the market could be ended. Her eyes narrowed. No, not ended, but redirected. She led me to a stone in her backyard. Flat, cracked down the middle. This is the first altar, she said. They traded a human soul here in exchange for rain during a famine. I looked closer. A handprint was burned into the stone. Small, child-sized. She continued. If you want to change the market, you must undo the first trade. You must enter the memory and make a different choice. Ow! She smiled darkly. By dying, that night I lay on the altar stone. Mama Yuzo placed herbs in my mouth and painted my forehead with ash. She whispered in a tongue I didn't know. The air grew still. The earth vibrated. Then everything went black. I opened my eyes in the past. The year was not numbered. The sky was purple. Villagers in leaf robes danced around a tree. A small girl, my ancestor, was tied to it. She screamed. Thunder roared. A spirit approached. Cowrie eyes. Iron jaw. No legs. It hovered. A man knelt and whispered, "We give you her soul for rain, for food, for survival." The spirit nodded. But before it could touch her, I stepped forward. I don't know how it worked, but I shouted, "Ino!" I ran to the girl, cut her ropes with a knife of thought, nothing physical, and pulled her in my arms. The villagers gasped. The spirit shrieked. The tree caught fire. The sky split, and I woke up screaming. Mama Yuzo stood over me, smiling. "You did it," she whispered. "The trade is broken. The seed undone." But peace didn't come. Instead, something worse did. The market had changed form again. Now it wasn't in objects, dolls, or clearing stalls. It lived in people. Desire no longer needed stalls. It just needed cracks. Hurt, hunger, ambition, and people were full of it. I returned to my village. Chica hugged me tight, but her eyes had changed again. This time not glowing, but empty, as if something inside her had gone to sleep. And that night, someone knocked on my door. A man in a black suit, city accent, briefcase in hand. He smiled warmly. "I'm from the Bureau of Spiritual Trade Regulation," he said. He handed me a document. "Congratulations, Adaeze. The market has now entered its next phase. You'll be its first regional administrator." I laughed, thought it was a joke, until I opened the briefcase. Inside, a contract, made of skin, signed in my blood. I had never signed it, but the market had. Sometimes, even when you change the past, the present finds another way to punish you. Because the real curse isn't the market. It's people. We are always ready to trade what we shouldn't. In next chapter, I'll show you how I tried to burn the contract, and how the village nearly burned with it. I tried to burn the contract. I should have known better. You can't burn flesh with fire it created. The man in the suit left the briefcase in my hands like it was a gift. Said he'd return in 3 days for my decision. Then he vanished. Literally. No footsteps. No sound. One blink, and he was gone. I opened the briefcase again, hoping it had changed. That maybe it was all a hallucination. But the contract was still there. Soft. Warm. Breathing. Signed in my name with a thumbprint made from blood and ash. And beneath my name, the words glowed faintly. First Regional Administrator. Duties, oversight, containment, collection, expansion. I ran to the church, dropped it in the fire pit, poured kerosene, lit a match. Flames roared. The contract curled. Then it screamed. A full human scream, loud and long, that echoed into the trees. I backed away, horrified. The fire stopped instantly. The contract lay untouched, but the altar cross beside the fire had turned to ash. The next day, strange things began happening. Rain fell upward. The village river turned into salt water. Children began speaking in voices that didn't belong to them. And in the market square, a new stall appeared overnight. Not with charms or goods, but with people, standing still, eyes open, unmoving. I recognized them all. Every person I had ever envied, hated, blamed, and one by one, they vanished. That night, a voice whispered in my room, "If you will not accept the contract, the market will make you the product." I woke with cold sweat and blood in my mouth. And the contract? It was lying on my chest. Signed again, this time in tears. I ran back to Mama Yuzo, but her home had collapsed into the earth, swallowed whole. Nothing left but a circle of ash and bones. The contract hovered above it, flapping like wings. I screamed at the sky. What do you want? The wind responded. Structure. System. You're chaos. You are bleeding the old order. That night, I made my final stand. I gathered the few remaining villagers who still spoke to me. My uncle, Chika, an elder named Popeye Kenna, and one boy who was born blind but saw the future in dreams. We met in the schoolhouse. I laid out the contract, told them everything. They listened, eyes wide. Then Chika said quietly, "Then maybe we build a new market." We all turned to her. She wasn't possessed. She was serious. I shook my head. No, no more trading. No more souls. But Popeye Kenna spoke next. Maybe not trade, he said. Maybe exchange. Sacrifice. For healing. For good. The boy nodded. Balanced offering. Give pain to stop pain. Choose to lose. So we tried. We gathered sacred objects. Birthstones, funeral cloth, the umbilical cord jar hidden in every elder's hut. We marked a circle in the village center. And we offered our regrets. Each person told a truth they had buried. Each cut their palm and let memory bleed. Each burned something they loved. I threw my mother's last letter. It caught fire, and the air shuddered. The earth opened. A tree grew from the center of the circle. Its leaves whispered. Its bark shimmered like obsidian. And hanging from its branches were mirrors. Each mirror showed a future. In one, I saw a village dancing under golden skies. In another, I saw the market. Larger, stronger, global. The tree offered us a question, not a gift. What seed will you plant? I looked at the others. They were waiting for me. Because in the end, it was me who had been chosen. Me who had crossed. Me who had refused and rebelled and screamed and sacrificed. I stepped forward, touched the trunk, and whispered, "No more markets. Only memory." The tree glowed. The mirror shattered. And we all fell to our knees. That night, fire rained from the sky. Not to destroy, to cleanse. All the old stalls burned. The market in the stream vanished. The doll cracked on its own. And the contract turned to dust. I had done it. I had built a new order. But there was a catch. I wanted to erase the market. But what I really did was transform it. And now, something even older was waking. Not trade, not desire, but memory itself. It remembers everything we've done, and it has a new prize to collect. In next chapter, the final chapter, I'll show you the shocking truth about what I became and how memory itself demands its payment in the end. I thought I ended the market, but the market was never just stalls or vendors or glowing-eyed spirits. It was always something deeper. Memory. The past never forgets. It just waits for its price. A month passed after the firestorm. No stalls appeared. No whispers at night. No curse dolls. The village slowly returned to normal. Cows gave birth again. Crops grew. People smiled like they meant it. Even Chika started humming as she plaited her doll's hair. It was peace, or so I thought, until the visitors came. They arrived on foot. No car. No bicycle. Just walking, one by one. By the end of the week, there were 23 of them. All strangers, from different regions, some from across the country, some from places I'd never heard of. They were drawn to me. They said they'd seen me in dreams, that their ancestors whispered my name, that they had pain and needed to forget. That's when it hit me. The market wasn't gone. It had become me. They didn't want to trade. They wanted to confess, to release what haunted them. And somehow, I could feel their memories before they spoke. When a man sat before me and cried about the brother he let drown, I saw the river. When a woman touched my hand and whispered about her unborn child, I felt the contraction in my spine. And when the old soldier stared at me in silence, I saw every gunshot, every scream, every life he took. I became the mirror tree, and every confession watered the root. But with every memory I absorbed, something in me faded. My reflection grew weaker. My voice cracked more often. I'd wake and not remember my own name. The more pain I healed, the more of myself I lost. Chika noticed first. "Auntie, why are you calling me Mama?" I laughed, nervously, but I knew. The cost hadn't disappeared. It had just changed form. One night, I sat under the real Irako tree, the one that still stood in the northern corner of the village. I lit no candle. I made no chant. I just spoke to the wind. "If I'm the market now, Who trades for me? The answer came as a whisper through the leaves. You are no longer trader, nor customer. You are the ledger, the record, the keeper. I didn't know whether to scream or pray. The next day, a child was born. A baby girl. She came out silent, eyes wide open, staring straight into mine. The midwife gasped. She looks just like you. The child didn't cry. Not once. Only smiled. And in her right hand a single cowrie. Fresh, glowing, warm. It started again. The villagers say I live alone now. That I talk to ghosts. That I never age. That I walk the market road at night, barefoot, whispering to the stars. They say the child, Adaeze Jr., disappeared 2 years after her birth. But I know better. She didn't disappear. She inherited. Because markets don't die. They evolve. I'm the last witness now. My hut is filled with objects no one understands. A doll with 3 faces. A contract that writes itself. A mirror that shows who you truly are, not what you pretend to be. People still come. They still confess. And I still listen. But these days, I don't speak much. Because I'm not really here anymore. I'm spread across memories. Living only in the stories people wish they could forget. So if you ever find yourself walking in a forest path, and it leads you somewhere unfamiliar, and you feel a sweetness in the air that doesn't match the season, stop. Don't go forward. Don't make eye contact. Don't pick up anything. And above all, don't trade. Because once you do, you'll understand what I've become. And by then it'll be too late. Share your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more stories.